Oh, hello, we're going to continue with Elijah. Maybe just previous video just appeared on the scene. And now we're going to read chapter 18 of 1 Kings, reading from the ESV, which is probably the most famous incident in Elijah's life. It's when he has the big confrontation between God and Baal on Mount Carmel. So let's read it. First of all, then we'll say a few things about it. After a long time, in the 3rd year, the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the land. So Elijah went to present himself to Ahab. Now the famine was severe in Samaria, and Ahab had summoned Obadiah, his palace administrator. Obadiah was a devout believer in the Lord. While Jezebel was killing off the Lord's prophets, Obadiah had taken 100 prophets and hidden them in 2 caves, 50 in each, and supplied them with food and water. Ahab had said to Obadiah, Go through the land to all the springs and valleys. Maybe we can find some grass to keep the horses and mules alive, so we will not have to kill any of our animals. So they divided the land they were to cover, Ahab going in one direction, Obadiah in another. As Obadiah was walking along, Elijah met him. Obadiah recognized him, bowed down to the ground and said, Is this really you, my lord Elijah? Yes, he replied. Tell your master Elijah is here. What have I done wrong? Asked Obadiah, that you are handing your servant over to Ahab to be put to death? Surely as the Lord lives, there is not a nation or kingdom where my master has not sent someone to look for you. And whenever a nation and kingdom claimed you were not there, he made them swear they could not find you. And now you tell me to go to my master and say, Elijah is here. I don't know where the Spirit of the Lord may carry you when I leave. If I go and tell Ahab and he doesn't find you, he will kill me. Yet I, your servant, have worshipped the Lord since my youth. Haven't you heard, my lord, that what I did while Jezebel was killing the prophets of the Lord? I hid 100 of the Lord's prophets in 2 caves, 50 in each, and supplied them with food and water. And now you tell me to go to my master and say, Elijah is here. He will kill me. Elijah said, As the Lord Almighty lives whom I serve, I will surely present myself to Ahab today. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, said to him, Is that you, the troubler of Israel? I have not made trouble for Israel, Elijah replied, but you and your father's family have. You've abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and your 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab sent word through the land to all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. And Elijah went before the people and said, How long will you waver between 2 opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. And the people said nothing. But Elijah said to them, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bowls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bowl and put it on wood, but not set fire to it. Then you will call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, he is God. Then all the people said, What you say is good. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, Choose one of the bowls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you, and call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. So they took the bowl given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted. But there was no response, and no one answered. But they danced around the altar they had made. At noon Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder, he said. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he's deep in thought, or busy, or travelling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Elijah said to the people, Come here to me. They came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, from whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, Your name shall be Israel. With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it, large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed, and he arranged the wood and cut the bull into pieces and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering on the wood. Do it again, he said, and they did it again. Do it a 3rd time, and the water ran down on the altar and filled the trench. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, God of Abraham and Isaac and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord. Answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and you are turning their hearts back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up water in the trench. And all the people saw this, and they prostrated themselves and cried, The Lord, he is God! The Lord, he is God! Then Elijah commanded them, Seize the prophets of Baal, don't let anyone get away. And they seized them. And Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered there. And Elijah said to Ahab, Go eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain. So Ahab went off to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, bent down to the ground, and put his face between his knees. Go and look towards the sea, he told his servant, and he went up and looked. There was nothing there, he said. 7 times Elijah said, Go back. 7th time the servant reported, A cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea. So Elijah said, Go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you. Meanwhile the sky grew black with clouds, the wind rose, the heavy rain started falling, and Ahab rode off to Jezreel. The power of the Lord came on Elijah, and he tucked his cloak into his belt, and he ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. So there we have it. Let's just give a few words of explanation of what's happening, why it's happening. First of all, we've kind of got the introduction here of the Baals, who you see mentioned in various of the prophets, and from this point on in the history of Israel. Baal was obviously a false god. He was believed to be a fertility god and also a god of the storm. So now, remember, Elijah has told Ahab, no rain's coming until I tell you. And they've had drought in the land, but now rain is about to come. We'll see, I think it's in the next chapter. We see here that first signs of it are there, and the next chapter it actually arrives. If none of these events here had happened, the people would have said, oh, Baal, because Baal is the god of the storm, oh, Baal has brought this rainfall to us. It's like today, you know, if anything goes wrong, oh, it's global warming, climate change that's causing it. Sometimes it might be a factor, or be linked even with the primary factor. But if people just say, oh, it's global warming, whether it's global warming has anything to do with it or not. Like here, they would have said, oh, Baal's doing this, whether Baal has anything to do with it or not. So this conflict, this demonstration that Baal is utterly useless, and only God is God, is saying that. So when the rain comes, then we'll not say, oh, it's Baal. We'll say, well, there's a lot of nonsense. But we've just been shown here, Baal is utterly useless and can do nothing. And then there's a whole general point that God does not want us to follow idols. Why? Because God is a God who saves us. It's part of, if you look throughout the Bible, throughout the Old Testament in particular, and throughout the prophecies, part of God's relationship with his people is that God rescues his people from difficulty. He is our saviour. Ultimately, most importantly, we are saved from sin. But we are saved from all sorts of things, and God delights in saving us. And it is part of his relationship with his people. You will call on me and I will answer. But if you worship Baal, is nothing. Baal could do nothing for it. Baal could not save the people. That's why God does not want us to worship false gods. Because it's a waste of time. It won't do anything for us. God is a God who can and does rescue us from various situations. And we need to know that he is the God who rescues us. And we see here that Jezebel has been killing the prophets of God. See, she's kind of the power behind the throne here. Ahab normally was king, but he wasn't really in charge. Jezebel seemed to be the one who was really in charge. then we've got Obadiah, who'd been secretly working. He was in charge of the palace. He'd been the chief administrator, top civil servant, if you like. And he'd been using his power and abilities to protect some of the prophets, to keep them alive. And he meets Elijah and bows down and worships him. Then Elijah says, God has told Elijah, right, you need to go meet Ahab now. Sometimes God tells his people to go and have to confront the powers of evil. In this case, in Moses' case, he had to confront Pharaoh. Here, Elijah has to confront Ahab. And and Obadiah thinks, goodness me, what are you telling me to do that for? Ahab had obviously he was really upset at what Elijah had said. And then obviously there was a drought, so it seems as though Elijah's words were true. And he was trying to find Elijah and hadn't been able to find him anywhere. And Obadiah, he knows Elijah is a prophet. Remember, Jesus said that the Spirit, no one knows where the Spirit is going or where he comes from. And you think that Obadiah is a man of God. He is led by the Spirit of God. And he thinks, how do I know that the God won't tell you to sort of go somewhere else after I've told Ahab you're here and you'll meet him? But if Elijah did not show up, Ahab would blame Obadiah and would take out his anger on Obadiah, and Obadiah would be killed. And Elijah assures him, says, I will appear before Ahab. You don't need to worry that I'm not going to show up. So Obadiah goes to meet Ahab and tells him. And then Elijah appears, and Ahab says to him, Who are you? Is that you, the troubler of Israel? And Elijah says, I'm not the troubler, it's you and your family who's the troubler, who's the real troublers. Because Ahab was disobeying God and leading the nation in disobeying God. He was the one who was bringing trouble upon the land. And then Elijah sets up the confrontation, says, summon all the false prophets, all the prophets of Baal and Asherah of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table. See, again, you see Jezebel really being the one who was really in charge. And said, bring all Israel. See, what really needed to happen was for Israel to turn away from their worship of these false idols to worship the Lord instead. So they summon them all. And then Elijah speaks to the people. You know, sometimes people say, preach the gospel, use the words if necessary. And it sounds a very clever thing to say. It's a load of nonsense, to be honest. Now, look, there is truth in it, in that the actions of our lives must match up with the words of our lives. But we need to speak to the people. And here Elijah speaks the word of God and says, how long, presents him with the challenge, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him. And he says, am I the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450? He says, get 2 bulls. And then first of all, he says, right, you set them up and call upon our God, whether it's the Lord or whether it's Baal, to send fire to consume the sacrifice. And first of all, the prophets of Baal go first. And they're dancing around, making a real old show of it. It might look very impressive, but there's no answer from any gods. Elijah taunts them, says, shout louder, maybe where he's gone, maybe he's gone away, maybe he's on business, maybe he's gone to the toilet, maybe he's sleeping. And the prophets just shout louder and louder and slash themselves. They're just getting more extreme in their actions, but it's having no effect whatsoever. And then Elijah prepares an altar. It takes 12 stones, one for each tribe. See, the whole of Israel was meant to follow God. Every single one of them. It says, put water around it as well, so there can be no doubt whatsoever that it's God who sends the fire. And it's God's fire which consumes the sacrifice. It says, fill 4 jars of water and pour it on them. And then it says, do it a 3rd time. They did it again. There's absolutely drenched in water. Then Elijah stands there and says, Lord, the God of Israel, Abraham, Isaac and Israel, Let it be known today that you are God, that I am your servant, and these things at your command. Answer me, Lord. And the Lord sends fire and consumes the sacrifice. And notice things related to other bits in the Bible. Remember in Malachi, towards the end it says that God will send an Elijah who will turn the hearts of the people back to the Lord. This is what Elijah here was seeking to do. This is the whole point of this. This is meant to turn the hearts of Israel back to the Lord instead of their false idols. And then we read also that in Hebrews, it's chapter 12, I think, it might be chapter 11, I think it's chapter 12, towards the end of Hebrews, it says, our God is a consuming fire. And here we see that God is a consuming fire. He consumes the sacrifice. And we see here that God demonstrates his power. He turns people's hearts to him by demonstrating his power. Then after it, and the sacrifice has been consumed, and people say, the Lord is God. And Elijah commands the people, seize the prophets of Baal and slaughter them. Then he says to Ahab, go and eat and drink, for there's a sound of a heavy rain. So Ahab set off to eat and drink, but Elijah climbs up to the top of Mount Carmel and sends his servant, go and look for a cloud, see if there's rain coming. And he comes back and says, I can't see anything, there's nothing. And Elijah says, go back and look again. You might think, well, Elijah would know there would be rain. It means we've just seen this great demonstration of God's power. But I think it's in James that it says Elijah was a man like us. And we see here his weakness, and after the next chapter we're going to see even more of Elijah's humanity, his weakness. Now it says he was a man like us. Elijah did amazing things. That means you or I, that God can work through us to do amazing things, even with all our weaknesses. And here then it says, the seventh time the servant comes back, there's a small cloud, as small as a man's hand. There's a tiny cloud. And now Elijah knows right now the rain is indeed coming. He needed just a little confirmation, a little encouragement. It says, then the sky grew black with clouds, and the wind rose, and heavy rain started falling, and Ahab rode after Jezreel, and Ahab went chasing after him. Sometimes we need just a little encouragement, but we see here, it's so important that we worship the true God, because he is the one who is able to rescue us. No other idols or gods can do anything for us. That's why God gets so angry when people worship false gods. Because worshipping gods who can do nothing for them. Our God, your God, my God is a God who can rescue. On that note, let's stop there.